Welcome to the podcast. My name is Father Bill W. I'm an Episcopal priest, and I live here in Austin, Texas. I've had the gift of recovery since December the 27th of 1972. Purpose of these podcast series is to try to go deeper into the history, the psychology, and in this instance, the spirituality of 12-step recovery, kind of a deeper dive. Typically, you're going to find on maybe some other podcasts. In this episode, this is the third episode in a series that we are doing on Buddhist practices and the 12-step journey. And our guest here to guide us is Kevin Griffin. Kevin is the author of One Breath at a Time, Buddhism and the 12 Steps. He's also got a number of other books that he has written, and he's got a website that is full of material, and I would encourage you to visit it. I've put a link to it in the show notes, so drop in and you can contact Kevin via that means as well. So Kevin, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Bill. Nice to see you, hear you.
You as well. You got a little bit of a cold going on?
Yeah, so maybe a little bit of a more bluesy voice today.
Bluesy.
So that fits with Austin, so that should be fine.
There we go. We'll go down to Antone's and off we go. All right. I was interested, Kevin, when you when you set up your book, you divided it and the 12 steps into 3 parts. And I think that's extremely helpful so that people can get kind of the 30,000-foot view of the steps. I think if you just kind of chop them up, you can get somewhat lost, but the broader view is very helpful. So we looked at the first episodes where you dealt with steps 1, 2, 3, and the surrender, the alignment, and now you're moving into the middle phase of the steps. And so this is steps 4 through 9, and you label these investigation and responsibility.
Right, thank you. I forgot what I called them.
Well, that's what I'm here for.
Investigation.
You wrote this a while ago.
It is over 20 years ago.
But I'm digging in, and I'll try to remind you of some stuff as we go along. So let me begin with a rather lengthy quotation, but I think it's important. So this is kind of the introduction to the part 2 of your
book. Part 2, yeah.
Yeah. You say, in the big book, the first paragraph of chapter 5, How It Works, includes the word honest 3 times. Clearly, this pivotal chapter, read at many 12-step meetings, makes the quest for truth its central theme. Insight meditation is a quest for truth, too, the truth of now. And then you go on to talk about steps 4 through 9, how they fall in place with that. Let's begin with step 4. It's usually a bit terrifying for most of us, certainly was for me. How did you approach that?
So just for the audience members who haven't memorized the steps, I will say that the step says, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves.
Thank you.
And personally, in my own recovery process, I didn't attempt step 4 in my first year of sobriety because I didn't have a sponsor, and I wasn't really working the program. When I got a sponsor, he basically said, if you got through a year without drinking and without a sponsor, you must have worked the first 3 steps, so let's work step 4, which was fine with me. And I simply wrote step 4 as a chronological story of the harm that I was discovering I had done in my life. I did not follow the guidance of the big book with the columns and the resentments and all that stuff. It wasn't particularly interesting to me. I don't think like that anyway, and that kind of dividing things up into sections. I think I'm a more linear thinker, and I felt that I accomplished what I needed to accomplish, which for me was to get really clear about my own failings, and develop humility around them, which I think is, of course, is one of the principles of 12-step recovery, but is for me more than just a principle. It's a key to, surviving life in a harmonious way, to living harmoniously in the world, to be able to accept criticism, and all that comes with step 9 too. But it's the beginning of that process, step 4. And I knew that I had resisted ever looking at my own failings, and that I had been extremely defensive anytime, particularly, an intimate partner would suggest that I had done something wrong or that I was flawed in some way. That would just spark an argument. So it was a huge shift for me. To me, step 4 is really a continuation of step 1. Step 1 is an inventory, right? In its essence, it's a recognition that something that you've been living unwisely, let's just say, and step 4 is like an expansion of that, because step 1 is focused on the addictive behavior and potentially substance or whatever the addiction is, whereas step 4 takes that as just a starting point and expands out into what are all the underlying behaviors and habits, patterns, emotional patterns, spoken ways of speaking as well, patterns that accompanied your addiction, I'll say, and what their relationship to the addiction was is another question, whether they're causes or results. I would argue that they tend to be both, that some of those unskillful behaviors and habits were things that were underlying our addiction and kind of triggered it. And then some of it was stuff that came as a result of being an addict. But I guess, I don't want to, I know you have questions, so if you want, we can go into then the connection then with Buddhism and how I make that connection.
I'm glad that you mentioned that. I had a lot of trouble, using the big book formula for doing inventory. It didn't feel comfortable or a very good fit for me as well. I knew I was sitting on top of a lot of secrets and a lot of shame. And that I intuitively knew that was the stuff I had to get to, and I didn't want to get to, But if it was going to be honest, those were the areas that I needed to go to. And jump ahead a little bit here, but when I finished doing my 5th step, sharing with another person, the guy said something to me at the end that just summed it all up for me. He said, Bill, welcome to the human race.
Yeah.
And that was it. Came down off my pedestal or my mountain, wherever the hell it was, or came out of the hole I was hiding in, might be a better description, and I joined the human race.
I had a similar experience with my sponsor as well. It's more like he just laughed at me. But similarly, kind of normalizing it. And I do think it's so interesting, isn't it, that this thing that we think is so shameful, when another alcoholic hears it, they're like, yeah, so what's new? Like,
right.
And actually, this does bear a direct correlation to my experience as a meditation teacher. When people talk about what they discover in their minds through meditation, there's often a lot of self-judgment and self-flagellation and shame and all that. Like your friend who said, welcome to the human race. That's very much what I say. I think these are just, this is what the human mind does. If you watch your mind, which is how I characterize the 4th step in Buddhism, is that we are taking an inventory of our mind, of what arises in our mind. You see things that are just what human beings do. And it's why community is so important, and why meetings are so important, and why Sangha in Buddhism, the community, is so important, because when you hear from other people, then you realize, when you go to a lot of AA meetings, you realize, my story isn't so special. But if we're just inside our own minds, the human mind is kind of a mess, It's a problem, but that's all we got, and we share it. And so, it's just something to work with rather. It doesn't help to judge it or to feel shame about it or to try to suppress it. We just have to work with it as best we can.
Right. We're going to take a fairly deep dive into your chapter on the fourth step, because you talk about several different kinds of Buddhist inventories. And I'm sure this is going to be new to most of our listeners. And the first one is called a hindrance inventory. And it deals with the 5 hindrances of desire, aversion, sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry, and skeptical doubt. I don't think a number of these appear in the big book. They're kind of hinted at, perhaps, but
I think they're definitely hinted at. It. Some of them in the 7. One of the sins that you Christians have. The 7 deadly sins, gluttony, and right. I think sloth is one of the deadly sins.
Sloth is one. I don't know that torpor made it, but
yeah, well, it's just fancy language for.
Yeah, right. So let's go through those. And what's the context for this? Could you maybe frame it?
Right. So this is a traditional Buddhist teaching that essentially the Buddha says these 5 qualities or energies are what block us from having clarity and focus in the mind. We get distracted by them, essentially. So, and without clarity and focus, we can't see things clearly, which is what insight is, to see things clearly. And the point of Buddhism is to develop wisdom, which is seeing things clearly. So as long as you are besieged by one or more of these qualities, you're not really seeing things clearly. So there's 5, but we can divide them up into 2 pairs, and then the last one, skeptical doubt. Desire and aversion are 2 sides of the same thing, which is that I want money and I don't want to be poor. So that's desire and aversion. And in the core Buddhist teaching on the 4 Noble Truths, the Buddha says that it's our persistent sense of dissatisfaction that causes us suffering. And this is a critical idea. It's not that we don't have what we want. It's that we are caught in the wanting. The wanting itself is the pain, which is counterintuitive because certainly our intuition says, when I get the thing I want, then I'll be happy. But because everything is impermanent, I can't hold on to anything that I want. And so it can't bring you any kind of permanent satisfaction. And the state of sensing that you need something, or even believing that you need something, is in and of itself a disturbing state. And so we know, when you think of a spiritual person, you think of somebody who is peaceful and not looking for something.
Mm-hmm.
They're serene, they're equanimous. It's like, oh, it's raining. That's okay. The train is late. That's okay. I'm not bothered by that. All the petty things, as well as obviously the bigger things that disturb what we call the untrained mind, are not disturbing to the trained mind, because there isn't a belief that we need something to be different from the way it is. This understanding comes about through meditation. When you watch your mind in meditation, you see that every time you start wanting something, and that can just be wanting to understand something, or planning something or worrying about something, that there's an emotional, an energetic agitation in the heart, in the body, in the mind. And that when you just let it go and come back to the breath and just sit with things as they are right now, then you're okay. So that's kind of a fundamental Buddhist principle, that it's when we're trying to go out of ourselves and change things and control things, that we create this inner disturbance, and that it's not necessary. I mean, there's this can become idealized, like, oh, I shouldn't have any desires, or I shouldn't have any aversion. And that's That's not realistic. That's not human.
Right.
But we learn to, moderate these things so that we're not caught in this cycle of craving. So this is clearly directly connected to addiction, because what is addiction but a desire to feel good and a desire to, and the aversion from feeling bad. So the first two hindrances, that's what drives addiction. So addicts understand this teaching. When I'm teaching a retreat or class, people in recovery get this right away. Oh, this isn't theoretical.
No.
So that's desire and aversion. Sleepiness and restlessness, the second two, are, again, like two sides of the same coin. Like not enough energy, too much energy.
Kind of the bipolar.
Yes. And they relate to depression with the sleepiness and anxiety, the restlessness. So there's an emotional component or connection with them. Oftentimes doubt shows up as doubt of our own potential, our own capacity to meditate, and in the recovery world, our capacity to get sober. Many people, you hear people say, well, I know that works for you, but I can't do it. I can't stop drinking. I tried, I'm uniquely flawed, right? Or they think, oh, these steps don't work. That's for you. I don't believe in God, so I can't work the steps, and all those kind of excuses. So doubt is considered actually the most dangerous hindrance because it's the one that makes us walk out the door and give up on the whole enterprise.
Which happens a lot in meditation.
It happens a lot in meditation, happens a lot in the 12-step world too. So,
yeah.
I mean, what's relapse but an expression of doubt? Like, this isn't really working. I can't do it. It's not worth it. I'm too flawed, whatever.
Too much God stuff here. This isn't for me. It's not going to work.
Yeah. I can spend all day talking about the hindrances. It's something, and I just encourage people to investigate for themselves. Most Buddhist books write about the 5 hindrances, but of course I bring an extra piece to that they're directly related to addiction, because even sleepiness is related to addiction. Food addicts tend to relapse when they're hungry, when they're tired. And we have hungry, angry, lonely, tired.
Right.
Anxiety, people get stressed out and they drink. So we can see how drugs, stimulants and depressives are all connected to just these energies that are uncomfortable for people. And so the mindfulness practice says you can learn to be with desire or aversion or sleepiness or restlessness or doubt without reacting. You can learn to hold it.
And these are going to come during a sit when I'm doing my meditation, but they're also going to come during the day.
Of course. Yeah, absolutely.
So the mindfulness is 24 hours a day, theoretically.
Yeah. Meditation gives us a time when we can focus on these without doing anything else. We're not busy. We're just sitting there and it's like, wow, there's that. Can I just breathe with that? Can I just feel that energy, or can I feel that desire and let it go? And so meditation is in a lot of ways just a training for the rest of our lives.
And it's not thinking of nothing necessarily.
No, not at all.
No, talk to me about it's watchfulness, understanding you correctly, for these distractions coming up in my mind, the pathology showing up, or the humanness. You can look at it that way too.
Well, it's one of the remarkable things you discover as you cultivate this practice is that we have this capacity to be aware of mind states, be aware of sensations, be aware of emotions, so that there's, as you said, like a watchfulness or a observing quality of the mind that in some ways, we're trying to strengthen that part of the mind that's not caught up in the hindrances, not caught up in the thinking, but is just able to see the thinking. So it's not that we've stopped thinking, but the way to understand it is that we've changed our relationship to thoughts. Our ordinary way of relating to thoughts is that they are me, and sometimes that they are guidance, or not just guidance, but orders. we speak before we think, and we act before we think, we say, but that action actually is driven by a thought, an underlying thought, an impulse. And so this idea of pausing and watching and seeing, oh, there's this impulse to say this or to do this. Is this what I want to do? And so it's the, interrupting those habitual reactive ways of being. And again, meditation is a great training for that, because when you're meditating, you can't do anything. You're just sitting there. So when the impulse comes, you're forced to just be with it and manage it and go, oh, what am I going to do with this impulse? Oh, I'm just going to breathe, relax, and just see if I can calm myself a little bit. And then you see, oh, it's a thing that came, and by not acting on it, it just fades away. And that's called freedom in Buddhism, because you're free from the impulse, right?
Yeah, you talk a little later in the chapter, I think, about right action, and you comment on right inaction.
Right.
I like that. We always have to do something, but maybe you don't have to do something.
Yeah, not doing something is it definitely, how many times have we gotten into trouble by deciding to do something? And
right, I have to do something, yeah.
Yeah, and waiting, learning to wait, just to stop and consider, well, I think I should do this, but I'm not sure. One of the things that when people come to me and they want advice about a decision they need to make,
yeah,
the first question I ask them is, by when do you need to make the decision? Because people, the thing is, and this goes right to this feeling of desire and aversion, which is people are uncomfortable not having an answer to something. So it's the desire to know. That they don't like, being in this place of indecision because, well, there's just this impulse. It's about control, right? If I don't know what's going to happen, if I haven't made a decision, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not in control at this moment. If I just make a decision, I feel like I'm in control. But oftentimes we find, as you know, that when you wait, you get more information. Things change. And then you go, oh, now I don't even have to make a decision. It was made for me. Or that problem solved itself. And I was going to jump in and try to fix it. It's like, no, just wait. So learning to wait and live with uncertainty. This is, again, like a spiritual practice, like breathing with, feel that desire. And can you just say, it's okay. I'm okay. I don't need to know.
I will never forget very early sobriety, dating my wife. And I got paid, and I wanted to buy a TV. And we were at the department store, whatever it was. And I said, I'm gonna buy that TV there. She said, no. She knew it was impulsive on my part.
Right.
And she said something I will never forget. She said, why don't you come back tomorrow? And if you feel the same way,
right.
Go ahead and buy it. Well, that was the most foreign thought I'd ever heard. It's act on it now.
I know, I need it. Gotta have it. Desire is powerful. I mean, desire, sometimes Buddhists call the world we live in a desire realm.
A desire realm.
And of course, it's true that the human race wouldn't continue without desire, with sexual desire and people, build skyscrapers out of desire, and the world runs on desire. So it's not a bad thing.
No,
it's just that you, when you watch it, you see how much you're controlled by it without really being thoughtful and careful, and that you don't have to act on every desire. You don't have to buy every TV you see.
It's a subtle difference, but it's like it's not that I have desires, it's that desires have me.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, that's when the freedom. Very few of us are free, you know?
Yeah, I think of freedom as it comes and goes.
Yes, it does.
I have moments of freedom, but
absolutely.
Yeah, total freedom, again, in a strict traditional early Buddhist sense, there's, a process by which one becomes completely free of craving. But that's for the Olympic level Buddhists,
Right.
I'm more like the middle school, soccer player Buddhist.
Beginner's mind, Kevin.
Yeah.
It's good to have that. Next, you write about what you call a precept inventory, is it?
Right.
Yeah. So, again, what is this about? Give us the context, and then we'll go through them.
The 5 precepts, which are these are sometimes called 5 lay precepts because the monastics have many more rules. But they're, very familiar to religious people. They're not to kill, not to steal, not to harm sexually, not to lie, not to use intoxicants. And the first 4 are the moral precepts that not using intoxicants is just advice because there's a tendency to break the other precepts when you use the intoxicants. So they're really similar to the commandments, but without a reference to God. And I do think one important aspect of them is that they're described as training precepts. So there's kind of an understanding that we're going to break them in various ways, whether by accident or intentionally. And so, again, we're not sort of creating an idea of perfectionism that one has to live up to, but the guidelines to creating a harmonious society and a comfortable life, an emotionally comfortable life. When you kill, steal, murder, rape, lie, it doesn't make for inner peace. And so they're viewed in different contexts. In the constant context of the Eightfold Path, they're considered mental purification, which I think is an interesting idea. But then in the broader sense of Buddhism, they're about creating wholesome and positive karmic results in your life so that, again, you're living in harmony with, in society with others, and you're creating, safe and comfortable relationships. People trust you because you don't lie, you don't steal, you're not harming people. And so you're not creating your own emotional scars internally, and you're not creating external conflicts that will tend to create more disturbance in your life.
Yeah, and for an addict coming into recovery,
right?
There's the moral element is what you're hinting at here.
Not just hinting. Yes,
not just hinting. You're laying them out there. You're
definitely. Morality.
Well, that was where we come at these things differently. This is why I think studying the Buddhist path tradition, it's one thing to look at the program and the 12-step program, and that's helpful and all that good stuff. But then if you add the lens of Buddhism, or in my case, I added the lens of history by looking at the 12 steps historically, where they came from, what were people talking about, thinking about, what was Wilson trying to capture in the Oxford Group program when he wrote these down. That's a very helpful way of kind of an added dimension to them that lets you go deeper. And so this is the moral aspect, which is really important, And we live in an age where, well, that's up to you, pretty much, we say.
Yeah. I mean, there is a element of that. I actually think that 12-step communities, 12-step meetings, and that society, if you will, is founded in the same morality as well. It's not, recovery isn't considered just abstinence. It's you stop, you don't lie, cheat, and steal anymore. You don't, sneak around with somebody's wife. If we're doing a moral inventory, we're concerned about morality. And
right, that's right.
If we're making amends for ways that we've harmed people, and that's what the precepts are about. So I certainly think that the 12 steps are quite aligned with this. This is not, I don't consider this to be extra by any means. It's just a clarification from my viewpoint.
But it's a clarification that can be very helpful for people. For me, it was like the discovery of the four absolutes. They have a hard time, by and large, in the program, particularly the purity thing. People say, well, don't put that on me. Don't put your moral code onto me. And yet Wilson said he put him in step 6 and 7. He put the absolutes, tucked them away there. That's why he kept those only 2 little paragraphs in the big book on 6 and 7. But yet it was the heart of the Oxford group.
Yeah, well, I consider 6 and 7 to be the transformative aspect of the program. It's where real change happens.
I couldn't agree more.
But I have a completely different, take on how that happens. Very much through a Buddhist lens. But
sure. Looking
obviously.
forward to getting to those next time. Yeah. But that's helpful. That's helpful for people. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is that when people get sober and they get clarity about their lives and about, what works and what doesn't work, you start to see that the way you were living wasn't really, it didn't make you happy. It didn't make other people, it created chaos in your life. And certainly sexual behavior, sexual addiction, or whatever you want to call it, unwholesome sexual behavior is extremely common among addicts. And, when we are intoxicated, those cravings are let loose. And a lot of our addiction is a craving for some love that we're longing for. Mm-hmm. And it winds up then being expressed in this unwholesome way through sex, which is not really what we're seeking. We're seeking love, but, we don't know how to find it. My work with my sponsor had almost nothing to do with alcohol and drugs. It was 90% about relationships.
Right.
And learning to relate to the opposite sex, or I could just say the sex that I'm drawn to, so that, it doesn't, if you're gay, it's not the opposite, but it's, learning to relate to others in non-sexual ways and being able to restrain my sexuality around, for me, women has been a vital part of recovery and very much my role as a Buddhist teacher, because the biggest way that there are many Buddhist teachers who've done a great deal of harm through their sexual energy. And I recognize that just the way I speak to a woman in a meditation class or after the class, or, especially like after, can do harm. And that I need to be able to restrain my energy and not show just even an iota of sexual energy towards someone. And that's my responsibility. So that grew out of sobriety and grew out of working with a sponsor and really learning, investigating, and, taking an inventory of that and seeing how I could deceive myself into thinking that I was just being friendly when I knew underneath that I was flirting. It might seem like, oh, you're being really like pure, like you said, but it's not. Real harm is done in those ways. Whether you're a Buddhist teacher or not, it happens in AA meetings every day of the week, every minute of every day of the week. It's one of the biggest problems in AA is particularly the way men treat women, in and outside the program. I hear about it more and more these days, and it's a real concern.
Absolutely. Let's go on to step 5. You write this: step 5 appears to stand in stark contrast to the Buddhist path of meditation. Typically, step 5 involves reading our 4th step inventory to a trusted person, usually a sponsor, while meditation is silent. Step 5 is spoken, while meditation is solitary. Step 5 is interpersonal, while meditation involves looking at our minds. Step 5 exposes our destructive thoughts and actions to another. If I'm reading you correctly, the Buddhist path and the 12-step path, they're not synonymous. There are some things where one has strengths over the other.
Exactly.
Ideally, we're going to benefit from both, but not try to, siphon out only the one.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the danger. And that's the beautiful part, I think, of your writing and your experience, Kevin, that you honor both traditions beautifully.
Yeah, thank you. This certainly one of my arguments is that the Buddhist world can really benefit from some of the things that the 12-step world emphasizes. And it is emphasis, because certainly in Buddhism, we have relationships with our teachers, and I work with people individually, and they talk about their challenges. And so it's not that that all of Buddhism is about being silent. I think that's certainly a misunderstanding if anybody thinks that's what it is. Nonetheless, the idea of the kind of level of honesty and exposure that someone acts on or speaks in the fifth step or simply in a meeting is something that's definitely missing in Western Buddhism. And it's so interesting to me. Well, it's not just interesting. I find it sort of sad that people come into a meditation group and there's this sort of feeling of, oh, everybody's got to be good here. We're all good. And we can't really speak the truth, and there's a lot of people with wounds, with addictions, with emotional challenges that are showing up for this spiritual practice that never get to actually address those wounds and addictions in that context. And so it can become this disconnection. It's like, over here I'm spiritual. It's like going to church on Sunday, right? And
exactly.
The rest of the week you're just, and it's very similar. I'm not saying that's the whole of the Buddhist world, but there's certainly an element of it, of the kind of trying to look good and look spiritual. And then you go home and, eat the half gallon of ice cream and, or, drink the bottle of wine. And, what have you really gotten out of it? A false kind of comfort.
Mm-hmm.
And step 5, I mean, my God, it's a wild thing to do, right? It's just like, nobody would ever volunteer for such a thing. And yet, you do it and it's like, wow. I mean, it's really just one of those mind-blowing experiences, I think, for many of us, where it's like, you just walk out of there kind of floating, like, oh my God, like what a relief.
Right, exactly.
And it's not just a thing you do once. It reveals to you the freedom that comes from self-revealing, from being honest. And it can completely shift. The whole process of 4 through 9 can really completely shift the way you operate in the world. It certainly changed the way I operate in the world,
Right.
And that's one of the huge real elements of freedom that comes from recovery. The freedom from, it's about ego, it's about letting go of ego.
It's all about that. It's all about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. In chapter 5, you talk about right speech and right listening.
Mm.
Could you amplify those a little bit for us?
Yeah, I mean, again, something that can certainly be, you could say a lot about them. I mean, there's a kind of traditional model for right speech is speaking the truth at the right time.
Yeah.
And only what I would say, something that's useful. Because even if it's true, it might not be useful to say. Why are you saying that?
Right.
And so it requires a care, like really being attentive and mindful. Like, what am I about to say? Does it fulfill at least these 3 aspects? Is this the right time? Are they going to be able to hear me when they're doing the dishes? Is this really useful? And is it really true? And that's enough of a question. How do I know what's true? Now, that becomes an existential question, but one that I find very interesting. What is true? Our minds make up a lot, and our minds tell us what they believe reality is. So our minds interpret life and then tell us. So that's really challenging. right listening. And I do an exercise like this on my retreats where I ask people one person just speaks and the other person just listens. And we get to watch what our minds do when we're listening, which is that our minds are thinking the whole time we're listening. And we are preparing a response. We are comparing ourselves. We are judging the other person. We're thinking about what we're going to have for lunch because we're bored with what they're saying. All kinds of other things are going on. And so oftentimes we miss what people are actually saying to us.
I'm not
and
present. I'm not.
This is a common thing around the 12-step world because a lot of 12-step world people have a template for recovery. You just need to do, call your sponsor, write your inventory, you find a higher power, great. And if you say, I'm having a really hard time, they'll be like, well, do you need to call your sponsor, write an inventory, and turn it over to God? And you're like, I don't believe in God. My last sponsor betrayed me, and, I'm dyslexic, so I can't write. You know what I mean? It's like, I wasn't listening to you when you told me those things, so I'm just going to tell you,
Right.
And people walk out and walk away from AA because people say, you've got to find a God. And you're like, I have religious trauma. Like, my priest raped me. Like, don't tell me to believe in God, whatever it is, right? Like, but people don't listen. I don't know if you've ever noticed that, Bill. People don't listen. They have their own story. So learning to listen, learning to speak is a huge, huge aspect. I mean, it's one of the great challenges of certainly of Buddhism that Buddhism puts forward. Right speech is part of the Eightfold Path. How to do it. I continue to work on it.
Nice. That's good. That's good. Well, I think I've run out of questions for now. One thing I did notice when I was just starting to grasp some of this stuff, my first couple of years in recovery, I got awfully silent. It was like, well, God, 90% of what I'm saying is bullshit anyway. Just shut up. Just shut up. And judgmental, and so critical. I had developed that to an art form, and boy, I got to see how sick it was.
There was one Buddhist teacher, Joseph Goldstein, who talks about, it's called the judging mind. Typical Buddhists, we like to, kind of characterize these things. And somebody comes in to meet with him during a retreat and they say, I just all these judgments keep showing up. I don't know what to do with them. He said, well, just start counting your judgments. And when you get to about 500, I think you'll start to laugh at yourself. And it's right, right? You stop taking yourself, if you start to see that you're judging every little stupid thing, like, why is that person wearing those shoes? You're like, why do I care? After a while, you'd see it's just ridiculous what your mind does. And, it's a human survival thing is to watch the environment, watch everything, interpret it, see if there's a danger or if there's something you can mate with or eat, And so it's all evolutionary, right? These habits of judgment. But after a while, when you see how absurd they are, it becomes easier to let go. Humor is a great way to, laughing at the human mind is a great way to relieve those tendencies.
Oftentimes, these character defects, if you can go deep enough with them, they have a gift.
Yeah.
Being very watchful, hyper-vigilant. I mean, it does have its benefits, And
Right.
I hope some of those guys are in the air traffic control towers.
I know, really. I hope they're being very judgmental.
I mean, this is right. I was a counselor, and I had an eye surgeon for patients, and someone was saying, well, he's a perfectionist. You really need to drill that out of him. I said, damned, I don't want to do that.
I know, exactly. Please.
So find the benefit, but don't let it control you.
Yeah, exactly. Use it as opposed to it using you, as you said.
That's right. Yeah, and if you can gain an appreciation for the things you're talking about here, Kevin, then recovery takes on wholly new dimensions.
Yeah.
And it can't get boring, because the potential for growth is phenomenal.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
if he can get beyond the slogans and stuff.
Yeah. There is that.
There is that. And I'm sure the Buddhists have them and the Christians have them. And
Yep.
it limits us. It limits us.
Yeah.
Well, listen, this has been fun and educational and inspiring. So that's not bad. Hit 3 big.
I'm having a good time.
There
Thanks,
you go.
Bill. When am I going to get the check? I'm sorry, did you?
It's in the mail, but
Oh, it is excellent.
no postage on it. So
right.
it's very doubtful.
And you don't have my address, so
Didn't need it.
for fun and for free, as we say. But maybe somebody will buy one of my books after they hear your
There you go.
podcast.
All right. Well, listen, it's been great, and we'll be back next time, and we're going to talk about 6 and 7, but maybe we'll get 8 and 9 squeezed in there.
Probably not, but yeah, we can try.
Probably not. We'll give it a hell of a shot.
All right.
I thank you, Kevin, for sharing this, and peace to you, and thank you guys for listening. Hope it was helpful. Again, go to Kevin's website and pick up some books. And
KevinGriffin.net. Just FYI.
.net. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for listening. God bless, and keep coming back.